What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today's video, we are talking wintertime fishing and why you should be throwing metal baits. Wintertime fishing. You guys have probably seen the videos where we're talking about slowing down. We're talking about throwing more natural, realistic colors. So why in the world would you be throwing metal baits, tail spins, blade baits? Believe it or not, they work amazingly well in the wintertime. You know, a blade bait is now a 12-month out of the year bait that's in my arsenal with improvements of action and looks. They look ultra realistic. They're no longer just a chunk of metal that has a little bit of flash. But wintertime, reaction fishing, when these fish are down deep, a lot of these fish are gonna go very deep. And it doesn't matter which lake you're on. Heck, it could be different on the lake that you're on, different parts of the lake. You know, upriver or up lake, they might be a little bit shallower, maybe in that 12 to 15 foot range. And then you go down lake and they might be down in 60 or 80 foot. It totally depends where the bait is in the water column. But wintertime fishing, a lot of these fish will go deep, and fishing heavy metals, what I'm going to call it, fishing heavy metal baits in the wintertime can add to your fishing, more bites, bigger bites, and it's a ton of fun. So I have basically three baits for you, three techniques that I want to help you guys out with. I'll give you some tips and some tricks on the baits themselves, talk about how to work them, and we'll talk about the gear. But throwing a tailspin or a blade bait or a spoon this time of the year can be awesome. So number one bait, let's talk about the blade bait, because that's a bait that we've talked about in recent reaction fishing videos, right? That little guy right there, that's the Mega Bass, the Dyna Response. We got the Demiki Vault, got some hook upgrades on there. I'll talk about those here in a little bit. But a blade bait, basically you fish it the same way you would just hopping a lipless. But in that cold water, we're talking water temps down in the low 40s, high 30s, mid 40s, you know, ultra clear water, ultra cold water. This stuff works amazingly well. So the blade bait, you're basically just feathering it enough to get that thing vibrating off the bottom, just up off the bottom 6-8 inches and back down. Depending on your water temp, you can be a little more aggressive. It's a little bit warmer, but for the most part, I'm working this thing super slow. But a blade bait, specifically those two, that Demiki Vault and then that Mega Bass Dyna Response, this is more of a subtle blade bait versus a more aggressive bait, right? The Vault and the Dyna Response. This guy has that right there on the tail. It slows down the actual vibration, how hard it thumps. It slows the fall as well. And again, a lot of times this time of the year, those fish can be lethargic throughout most of the day. So you want to fish fairly slow unless you're kind of triggering those fish. We've talked about that. But that guy right there, awesome tackle on it. You don't have to terminal tackle. You don't have to necessarily upgrade your snap or your hooks, but I almost always put a split ring and better hooks on my blade baits. Okay, I'll link that stuff down below in the video description. But a blade bait this time of the year, probably you guys have heard of like the Silver Buddy. We've talked about that many different winter fishing videos. You know, out in California, we knew of a fish that was up to 19 pounds, a 19-pound largemouth caught in the winter on a little tiny blade bait, a little Silver Buddy. But through the years, the Vault, the Dyna Response, the actions are great, the colors are great. It's no longer just a chunk of lead or metal. It actually has good-looking paint schemes on it. So they look extremely realistic. And then adding that little bit of vibration, that little fluttering, really mimics a dying bait fish, and it will get bites in the dead of winter. We've caught fish on blades when the water's almost frozen. It is an awesome technique. So again, that dyno response is, I usually have both tied on because any given day, the fish will kind of tell you what they want. Do they want more of that aggressive vibration from that vault, or do they want kind of that slower, less aggressive shimmy or shake vibration on the dyno response? One day they might eat one day they might eat the other, and vice versa. It just totally depends on your weather conditions, the fish's attitudes, and how aggressive they want that bait. So a blade bait is my #1 metal bait tied on. I mean, like I said earlier, it's usually in the box, the rod locker for me, 12 months out of the year, but right now it's always with me and I have both of those tied on. #2, let's talk about a spoon. I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible. So I only gave you 2 blade baits. I'm gonna give you 2 spoons and then 2 tail spins, just to really simplify that for you guys. But a spoon, I have 2 different styles of spoons for you. We got a jigging spoon, 1.75 ounces, and then we have a flutter spoon, 1.125 ounces, okay? This is going to fall a lot wider, a lot slower. So when do I use each? Let's talk about the flutter spoon, because probably in the fall you guys were throwing flutter spoons. Hopefully you saw some of our videos and got a chance to throw a flutter spoon. This is the Nichols. That's the Lake Fork Tackle flutter spoon. That's an awesome size. Now it's really important with all of these baits to match the size of the bait fish. When you catch a fish or two and they start spitting up bait, are they spitting up little tiny baits where you have to go down in your blade bait to like the 1/4 ounce? Or are they spitting up bigger threadfin shad or gizzard shad? So you're gonna have to adjust your bait selection and size based on what those fish are eating. But let's talk about the flutter spoon. So there's the mini mag, there's the Ben Parker, there's a lot of different size spoons. I really like that Lake Fork, the Nichols, the Lake Fork flutter spoon size. It's not too big, not too small, but this thing is fairly light for its size, and it has a real wide fall. So if you're fishing in like 6 foot to, let's say, 15 foot, throwing that flutter spoon can work really well. It doesn't crash down to the bottom like that heavier jigging spoon. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But it basically, you're hopping, letting it fall in semi-tight line. This thing's doing that dying bait fish fall, and it can work extremely well on edges of grass, out off of main lake points. It just mimics a dying bait fish. So this thing works extremely well. Comes in a few different sizes. That's a little bit smaller one. Again, we're just picking sizes that match the bait fish. Now, I really like that Nichols. Like I said, it comes pre-rigged with a swivel on the line tie, and then a nice hook on the bottom. You don't have to change that stuff out. You know, when you're dealing with a flutter spoon and you're reeling it back to the boat, if you don't have that swivel on there, you get a lot of line twist. So that's an added bonus for that guy right there. And then the jigging spoon. Now, this is fished completely different. Well, not completely, but it targets fish a lot deeper. This is like your 20 to 60 foot range. Now, you're going to use your electronics, typically your 2D sonar. You can use your forward facing if you got it, but 2D sonar, traditional 2D sonar, we've been doing this for years, video game fishing. You see the stacks of lasagna on there on your graph. You drop this thing down there, a little tip for you, thumb your spool so it falls straight, so it's not doing the flutter. It actually just falls straight down like a bullet. You get down there and you want to hop this thing just above where those bait fish are, where the fish are, and you're same thing. You're hopping it and you're letting it fall, hopping it, letting it fall, and it's just doing that dying bait fish. But you're fishing it but you're fishing it down there deeper for those fish. Like I said, depending on where the bait fish are in your fishery, even if you're on the same lake, 2 different areas of the lake, they could be 12 foot here, 15 foot here, and they could be 60 foot over here. It totally depends. So I have both of these tied on. But the jigging spoon, that's that Nichols, that's that Duh spoon. It's my favorite jigging spoon on the market. Again, comes pre-rigged with swivel, good hook on the back. You don't have to upgrade that stuff. But as far as colors, I'm going with a Morning Dawn or a Sierra, or I'll link some of those down in the video description, but I'm going either bright, like a fried chicken or a electric chicken, you know, kind of chartreuse and pink, or I'm going with like the naturals, okay? But a jigging spoon allows you to get down to those active fish. Now that's what's important about all of these baits. You know, whether you're throwing the blade bait on the bottom, you might see them down there moving around on bottom in 20, 25 foot, and you're throwing that blade out there, you're just hopping it. They might be chasing bait down deep. You're never gonna see these fish up on the surface. You might see them down deep, and then you go to a different part of the lake and you might see them busting on shad or something in the back of a pocket in 15 foot, right? You might see that. These fish are crazy. They are. We've proven it with speed cranking, and now with forward facing, you see that these fish do, when they get in those feed modes, they can be aggressive. But for the most part, these baits really target those fish that are down close to bottom. Even the jigging spoon, I might hop it up, let it fall, hop it up, let it fall. Again, I see that bait ball on my 2D sonar, looks just like a blob down there. I'm keeping it right there in that bait ball, and then I might let it crash. I might free spool, let it crash 8 or 10 feet through that bait ball and hop it up on the bottom, or I might let it go all the way to the bottom and then hop it off the bottom. Just little rod tip twitches, and that's basically just taking that bait and flipping it over on bottom like a dying baitfish. So that works extremely well. Now, last but not least, my third bait that works really well, third metal bait that works really well this time of the year, is going to be this guy right here, a tailspin, okay? It's a heavy bait, 3/4 ounce bait. It can get down quick, but it has some flash. It has some vibration. This can be fished a ton of different ways. Traditionally, they've been fished along bluff walls, right? You throw it along that bluff wall, you let that thing fall. It falls fairly quickly, but that tail is spiraling on the way down. It's got a little Colorado blade on there. It slows the fall. But traditionally, that's how they're fished. You can fish them on a straight retrieve, so throw it out there, reel it back, or you can do the hopping technique, just like we do with the blade bait or that spoon on bottom. Just get that thing swimming up off the bottom 6-8 inches, and then that tail's swimming down, swimming up, swimming down. My two favorite ways to fish these this time of the year: throw that thing out, let it hit bottom, okay? Pop it up maybe 6-8 inches, and now I'm just slowly retrieving it, just like you would your favorite single hooked swim bait, right? Whether it's a Kitech or an X Zone or whatever it is, whatever your favorite swim bait is, you could fish these the exact same way. Now, the other way is hopping it, just like the blade. Again, you're getting that tail spin, you're getting that tail flash and vibration to swim up and swim down, swim up and swim down, okay? That is the Jackal Daracoup. That is one of my favorites. My other favorite is this guy right here. This is the Demiki Axe Blade. Willow blade. It has stinger hook attached to the blade. I can't tell you how many times I get short struck on a blade this time of the year. They actually hit the blade. So having that stinger hook built into that bait is awesome. But again, we have that willow blade versus, I'm getting hooked here, the Colorado blade. I really like the axe blade for the cast and wind retrieve. So let it hit bottom, pop that thing up a few inches, and let that willow blade do its magic. It just mimics shad, baitfish really, really well. But a blade bait, a tail spin, a spoon, all are great options this time of the year. Again, these fish aren't always going to be active. You might have to slow down and finesse fish for them. But if they're willing to eat a blade bait, if they're willing to eat a spoon, if they're willing to eat a tail spin, you guys can catch a lot of fish and some really, really big ones. As far as gear to throw these, again, I will link hook upgrades and split ring upgrades. I'll link those down below in the video description. But as far as gear, typically on my blade baits and my my tail spins, I'm going with like a 6'10" medium, a 7-foot medium. I might even go with a 7-foot medium light, depending on the size of fish I'm fishing around, depending on just how that bait specifically feels on that rod. But you can get away with your medium light rods on the blade baits and the tail spins. And then as far as the bigger spoons and the jigging spoon, I'm going with a 7-foot medium heavy, 7.5 medium, 7.6 medium heavy. Totally depends on the size of the bait you're throwing and the weight. But I'm going with line. I'm typically going with larger line. You guys know that both Matt and I love throwing braid to leader. You get that sensitivity, you get the castability, the casting distance, but this is one of the very rare circumstances where we throw straight fluorocarbon. We don't need that braid, and that thicker fluorocarbon actually slows that line, so when you do let these baits fall, they don't hook, the hook doesn't come over and hook the line and foul your bait, and then you have to wind it up and put a bunch of twists in your line as that spoon's coming up like this, right? So 18, 20-pound fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon, and then with the blades and the tail spins, you can get away with 10 or 12. Typically 12, again, it just slows that fall. You don't want those hooks catching that line on the fall. With that thicker line diameter, it's more resistant in the water, and it just helps with fouling the hooks. But guys, if you haven't already, you're already out fishing in the wintertime, and you want to try reaction fishing, throwing some kind of heavy metal works extremely well this time of the year. Whether it's the blade bait, the tail spin, or the spoon, you guys will have success next time you're out on the water. Down below, I will link all this stuff down below in the video description, like I said, some upgrades, some color choices, that sort of stuff, the gear, and give it a go, guys. Throwing this stuff out in the wintertime, cold water, you'll be amazed. Your hands will be freezing, but you'll catch 5, 6, 7 pounders eating blades off the bottom. It is so much fun. Guys, if you learned something from this video or you like this video, hit that like button. Remember, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell, turn on those notifications so you guys know when we're putting out content. We appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, and we will see you guys on the next video.